department. I was originally a member of the class of 2013, but through a really interesting circumstance, which I'll tell you about, I decided to take some time off school and work on a project. And so, first, I'm a pretty normal Princeton student, or I was. I, had a social group. We went to lawn parties. I was on the crew team. I was a coxswain, and basically, we did a lot of things together, and I really felt like I was a part of the Princeton community. But even through all of this, to some extent, I felt unhappy. I wasn't quite sure why I was studying what I was studying in my MAE classes. I was struggling academically, which is something that I think a lot of us don't really take enough time to talk about. And, just emotionally, because I was frustrated by all of these things that were going on, it made it really difficult to focus on school. But there was this fellowship program that I heard about called the Teal Fellowship. And it's sponsored by Peter Thiel, who was the founder of PayPal, and then who was the earliest investor in Facebook. So, he used a lot of money. And he decided that he wanted to start this fellowship program to encourage students to do unconventional things. In the media, it's been hyped as this program to make kids drop out of college. It's not entirely true. The point is to make students think critically about their life path and what they actually wanted to do it. And so my project started out, a long time ago, actually. And I'm sure a lot of us in the audience have interests that start out like this. They started out as personal interests. I really liked tinkering with solar cars. And that eventually, throughout high school, led me to do research into solar energy. And I eventually had the chance to present my research at a science fair. And so through there, I actually met a friend who suggested to me that because she was from Indonesia, the applications of a device that I developed would also be useful in the developing world. And so as I came into Princeton, I actually got a Grand Challenges internship the summer after my freshman year to travel to Kenya and deploy this device I developed. And so the sun splitter, which is the name of the device I developed, is a device that rotates solar panels so that they follow the sun. And it's, it's not very commonly known, but it makes sense if I tell you about it. If you rotate your solar panel so that it's mimicking the path of the sun, then obviously because it's pointed directly, it can generate up to 40% more electricity. And so traditional solar trackers, they use motors, they're really complicated. It's really difficult to understand how they work. So, I couldn't understand one, let alone expecting someone in Kenya or in Tanzania in the middle of nowhere to be able to understand how trackers work. But I had a chance to, through this internship, deploy the very first prototype of the sun splitter. And, I got really interesting feedback. At one point, people were like, it's really lovely that you want to help us, and this project is really interesting. But the design, quite honestly, sucks. And, we don't understand how it works. There's a lot that needs to improve. We don't know how to repair this once we leave. And so this is a really interesting opportunity for me to realize that the work I was doing was important. I felt compelled to go back, and actually make the design better. But I want to share with you a story that really kind of pushed me to make the decision to stop out of school. I met a woman in the village who showed me that she had these 3 solar lanterns that she would charge. She'd give 1 solar lantern to her husband, she'd give 1 solar lantern to her kids, and then the last one she would save for herself, but only if it had enough charge. And this is what she was telling me, was that the 2 solar lanterns would charge fully, but the third one, it would kind of charge if it was sunny enough, but on some days when it was too cloudy or the conditions just weren't ideal, she couldn't get enough charge out of the panel. And I thought, well, this is actually really easy. I can make the solar panel rotate. And so I went into town, I bought supplies, and I came back and tried to find this woman. And when I asked around and realized she wasn't there, her neighbors told me that she actually got trampled by a buffalo. And you know, she's been kind of telling me about this, right? She goes out into sometimes into the forest or into the fields to try and gather firewood so she can make a fire and cook at night. But it's really hard to sometimes, especially when the lantern isn't working. And you know, I think it was a situation like this that helped me realize that you know, me not working on this project, this really important project, is a matter of life or death. And you know, so when I came back to Princeton for my sophomore year, in the back of my mind, felt this really uncomfortable itch. And you know, on top of the fact that I was struggling academically, you know, I was, you know, just really had a lot of mixed feelings about why I was at Princeton. I just decided that maybe it was a good idea to take time off, and this fellowship opportunity ended up being a really positive experience for me. So to explain to you how the sun splitter works, if you're curious, the intention is to use local materials. So this is the new design based on the feedback that we got from our first prototype in our pilot in Kenya. And now the sun splitter uses a water pump. And so basically how it works is you fill up these pop bottles, which can be found anywhere in the world, full of water, and then you attach them using the water clock to one side of the solar panel. And so you add a counterweight on the other side, and so it's really like a scale, right? It'll just balance itself out. And the tricky part is obviously getting the flow rate out of these pop bottles to match the rate at which the sun is actually moving across the sky. But if you take a couple days and you calibrate it using a valve, you can actually pretty much mimic perfectly the same rotation that you would get using an electrical motor that traditional solar trackers would use. And so, you know, the valve is intended to be super simple. You just adjust the height of the flow, and based on, you know, the height of that valve, you can change the flow rate. And, you know, thanks to the fluids class I had sophomore year, I was able to learn this fast. But, you know, I decided to apply this knowledge and actually use an intuitive idea that they would be able to understand instead of the far more complicated idea that I had before. And so, you know, as the water flows out, it can flow into a jerry can or any kind of receiving container or a water filter. And so in this way, we're able to partner with other nonprofits and other organizations to really make sure that these technologies are integrated. And so, as I mentioned, you know, it'll allow the solar panel to follow the sun. And then because the receiving container is separate, it can allow you to continue to collect the water at any point during the day, so you don't have to wait for it. And then at the end of the day, you can get at least 4 liters of clean water depending on the size of the pop bottles, or 40% more electricity because the solar panel is rotating. And so I realized as I got this fellowship that I could do anything, right? I now have 2 years to work on my project. But then I also realized that not only can I work on my project, I can also use this time away from Princeton to get perspective on, you know, what's actually important to me. Why am I studying MAE? Why do I care about being a member of this university? And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about all of the different experiences I've had. And the point is to show you that all of it's very realistic. Any one of us can take time off if you think the opportunity is right for you. And yeah, so the first thing that I did was we deployed a pilot. The first thing I did was find other team members to work on the sun splitter with me. So, you know, before this entire time, I've been working on the sun splitter by myself. But after going to a couple of conferences related to social enterprise, related to energy access, I was able to find other individuals who were interested in working on the project with me. So this was our very first deployment with the new design in Tanzania. And the reception was like really different. People, instead of being like, your design is kind of sucky, but we appreciate you helping, people were all of a sudden like, oh, this uses water. I understand. It makes my water cleaner, but at the same time, it rotates the solar panel. Like, it's a lot more intuitive for them to understand, and it actually makes sense. The other cool thing that we got to do was actually partner with real organizations, real nonprofits. And so this was that transition from, instead of just me tinkering around in the lab in MAE or in my basement, this is actually technology that other organizations are using. And so this was really cool. We partnered with a maternity clinic in Uganda to be able to deploy sun-scooters. And so now the women, the midwives and the nurses, will be able to charge their cell phones in the daytime, and then at night they can use any of the spare electricity to, cook for some of the families that are waiting for their their mothers or their wives. And it just helps to build that community. And it's for them just having some electricity is astounding, because before they didn't have anything at all. And so it was really awesome to be able to work with real organizations, and I personally developed a lot of professional skills from being able to do so.